Welcome back to another Pen Talk. Thanks for tuning in. Yes, we're going to be visiting a black box, but what's in the box is what's really important. I've been on a do-you-like run, so I figured I needed to go back to my favorite Chinese pen supplier of the moment. You may recognize the black box. We'll flip it over and we'll see the label. Yes, it's a Pen BBS, but it's a model I haven't looked at before. It's a 267, and it's in one of those phenomenal acrylics, the 29. So my viewers recommended using Google Translate, so I loaded the program, the app, just clicked on the camera, and it's now trying to interpret the Chinese characters here. The color seems to be berry. So it's a water pen, it's a fountain pen. Interesting to see that happen. So these unique acrylics come in what they call a pencil case. You know, I call it a pen kimono, but it's just nice. And I've learned to be able to thread this back on appropriately. Nice little abalone accent there for the thread. So we bring it out, and it'll be a slow unveiling. And to me, it's easier just to push the pen up from the bottom, and it is revealed. So I don't have this color. I got some other colors in my 3008 series, but this one is certainly as unique, as interesting, just phenomenal. I mean, I've not seen an acrylic like this on any other pen. So where does Pen BBS find these acrylics? That's a very interesting question. Maybe we may have an answer for that in a month or so as we get more information and feedback. And this is a long pen. So what I find interesting is the shape, and we'll go into that in a little bit more detail, but let's explore this pen. And again, the section is the same material as the rest of the pen. And it has that very strong acrylic smell. So there's a few viewers that I've known that don't care for the smell, but it goes away eventually. You can leave it uncapped for a while and, you know, take the pen apart and just leave whatever is gassing out of the pen to continue to gas out, and then eventually it won't smell anymore. So as this pen has no clip or no roll stop on it, you need to do something to stop it from rolling off the desk. So while that pen is sitting there, we're going to bring out number 2. Again, I just love this acrylic. I love these colors. I couldn't just settle for one, and I think eventually these will all disappear and we won't be able to get a hold of them anymore. So while they were available, I needed to add to my collection. And there's also a clear one coming, kind of like Larry Pen Bug guy reviewed. And this also has that same extra section there that's the same material as the pen. All Pen BBSs have the same nibs in them. So that's one of the things that's common. And here's that same acrylic in a 308. So one of my viewers talked about they got a pen that I had done a review on, a Pen BBS pen, and it didn't look exactly like the one in the review. So these are hand-turned acrylics. The acrylics are probably hand-poured and handmade. So no two pens are going to be identical. There's going to be variation in the pens. You can see the variations in the material that's in these two pens. I mean, it's the same material, but not exactly the same. I think they do an excellent job at pairing up the different pieces that they've machined out of that stock. And here's some of the other colors that I really enjoyed. There's a video I did on the 308, so if you want more detail, I'll put that link in the description. So here are the 4 styles of pens that I have from Pen BBS, and I just think this is an extraordinary range for one relatively small pen manufacturer in China to do. Phenomenal materials, extremely good engineering, very well made, and a beautiful nib. So I'm just impressed. I mean, there's something here for everyone, I think. From something, a unique design, ergonomically fits into the hand very, very well, your traditional cigar-shaped pen with, I think, the perfect dimensions for this style of pen. And then you have this long writing pen, you know, designed, I think, to facilitate writing for long periods of time. You know, we started out with quill pens, and there's also been a lot of desk pens around, and this is kind of like that desk pen shape, but with a cap. And then they came out with a piston filler, and not just to duplicate or mimic, but they came out with the first one of this design that I'm aware of that post off of the blind cap. And of course, those acrylics that they use are just phenomenal. So I think we really have to admire and respect what Pen BBS has been able to do. I'm certainly impressed, and it certainly, I think, has been a very boon to the pen community that throughout the world we can acquire and appreciate and write with these excellent writing instruments. Here are all 4 pens uncapped. 2 of them post. The piston filler 323 and the 3008 cigar-shaped pen. They post fine. The 323, this is the 309, the 323 and the 326 do not post. Yeah, put the caps up here. I mean, it's not, do they post badly? They don't post. So what I want to do is zoom in on the nibs and sections. So to me, I'm just impressed with the fact that these are machined from acrylic, just like the other acrylic parts of the pen. You'll notice a decent flare out here, a decent, even more flare out here with a little bit bigger section than this one. The section's a little bit smaller with a much smaller flare out here at the end, and this one is a little bit longer. It's more similar to the 323, and it has a nice flare out, but it's thinner. So they give you a number of different grips that obviously you really can't tell whether one's going to work for you or not until you actually put it in your hand. So when I do my reviews, I try to give you dimensions, and what I do is I measure the thinnest part of the grip, and then I measure the thickest part, which is usually right before the threads, if there are threads. And then I give you the length of the section from the end of the threads to the end of the section. So you can put things in perspective if you can visualize those dimensions. Again, I have some nice light coming in, so these colors certainly do look nice in this different light. The other thing is they all have the same nib, and they also have the same feed. And that's one of the things that, you know, it'd be nice if they had some variety to it, but the nib and the feed work so well that it's hard to fault them for that. The other thing is the nib assembly on all these pens unscrews. It might be a little bit of a resistance there in the beginning, because you'll notice there's an O-ring here at the bottom. The other thing is some of these, it's easy to pull out the nib and feed with the right little lobster gripper. So you don't want to twist it, you just want to kind of work it out. And you can see this one comes out fairly easily. And the other thing to keep in mind is when I reinsert it, I just put it in with no pressure, and I turn it until you find that little spot where it just slides right in. So most of these have a little bit of a key function there. So some of my viewers have talked about they can't remove the nib and feed. In this pen here, I cannot do that with it. The fins here are very, very soft. So when I try to use the gripper to squeeze it, the fins get distorted and crushed. So I'm just going to leave this alone. I flushed both of these. It's a lot easier to clean out the material and dry it when you can take it all apart like I did with this one, but this one I'll just leave set for a while. It just has a little bit of water in it, which will eventually evaporate over time. There's been some discussion about how difficult it is to unscrew the section on the Pen BBS pens, and that's primarily because of this O-ring there, which I think is really great to seal it up and really makes it a good eyedropper, but it creates resistance when you unscrew and screw, but you put a little silicone grease there, a little dab will do you, and it makes it a lot smoother and a lot easier to disassemble and assemble the section and barrel. So in looking at the 267 design, I want to pay homage to the origins of the design, which is the iconic desk pen, which probably came about the same time as fountain pens. I mean, it was not a portable pen. It sat on your desk. It sat in some type of inkwell, and there have been a lot of designs and varieties of inkwells that they could have sat in. You know, you'd pour ink into a container which had the little opening for the pen, and then as you pulled the pen out, the nib was ready to write with. So I have here a couple versions. I just picked them out just to show that this is your Esterbrook dipless pen. There's no sac or any reservoir system in the barrel. It has an interesting design feed here, which holds a lot of ink. You can dip this and you can write for a page or two. And it has a great nib in it. This one is just a generic desk pen. And this is extremely long. It's over 8 inches or over 20 millimeters or 200 millimeters or 20 centimeters. It's interesting, a section here, very typical, very narrow, very hourglass shaped, a small gold nib. It's not really flexible, but then for desk pens, you probably didn't do that. You know, this is for signing, maybe even going through carbon paper. And here's your 267. So I just wanted to put those in perspective. I think it's good to take a look at a historical view and how designs evolve over time. There may be some of my viewers who actually recognize this pen. Came out in early 30s, I think, and Esterbrook made it, and it was in every bank. I may have to explain a bank to some of my viewers, but that was a place which most of us were familiar with when we were younger. There's probably as many banks as there were bars. They were on every corner, and that's where you did your money transactions. You know, deposited paychecks or your pay. Sometimes we used to get paid in cash a lot. And you know, you got your mortgage from them or whatever, and they would have desks there with a lot of forms that you needed to fill out, and they would provide you with a pen. And that pen was secured. And this is an iconic example of the Esterbrook version. Probably there was an Esterbrook in every bank in the United States in the 30s. It's a lever fill. Has your standard Esterbrook nib in it, replaceable nib. This is a great writer. A section kind of similar to that one we saw earlier, the kind of generic one. And of course, you know, instructions for those that may not know that you need to put the pen back in the socket because they would dry out. I can imagine there was part of the evening activities was making certain each of these pens were filled for the beginning of the next business day. And this nice ball chain here, which I think we used to call it toilet bowl chain, at least that's my recollection. So a little bit of history for those of you that maybe some of you have actually used these pens in banks, but there may be also some of us out there in the audience, some of you out there in the audience that probably don't even go to a bank anymore or use anything like that from a physical location to do your monetary transactions. So what ink to put in? Well, I think it has to be a Pen BBS ink, number 236, which is the Mandarin duck ink. I put this in an Osmoroid nib. So I figured I'd give it a shot, Pen BBS ink and a Pen BBS pen. Let's see how it writes. As we mentioned, this fits fine in the hand. I can't imagine any hand that this wouldn't fit well in. It's light, we'll give you those weights. It's balanced, that's fine. The section, to me, is about as small as I want to get. We'll give you the dimensions of that section. The end to flare out is nice, you know exactly where you're at. The threads, you don't really feel much at all, so you can really hold this pen anywhere you want for those people that want to do that. It just doesn't post. I mean, the cap just, I mean, you could potentially put it there, but it doesn't, you know, stay secure at all. I may have used different numbers when I talked about these in the past, but this is the actual designation for this pen, and the 29 is the color of the acrylic. And SF, which they have at the end of each one, I think means soft fine. This nib is just extremely smooth, lays down a very, very nice patch of ink. This is an interesting color. I don't have anything else like this color. I guess it's in the purple family, which kind of matches a little bit the color of this pen. So another consistent writer from Pen BBS. You know, I guess I can't fault their choice of nibs and feed and how this pen is done because of how nice it writes. First time, every time, it doesn't dry out. You can I left the pen set for a few minutes, picked it up, it wrote right away. So that's nice. And I think the other key thing that these pens are designed to write for long periods of time because they're ergonomically well designed and function right. And for those that have particular taste in pens, you can find one of these that will hopefully suit your needs, requirements, wants, and desires. Now we come to the tough part, the rating. I gave a lot of thought to this. This is really tough. I'm challenged that I came up with this, so we're going to give it a 6.5. The main reason why it's a 6.5 is this pen is not for everybody. It's not a pocket pen in any sense of the word. It's a pen that's not going to fit in any pen cases, so transporting it is going to be a challenge. I mean, it's a great nib. It writes well. It looks great, but you know, it's limited by its unique design. It's limited by what I would say is Pen BBS's attempt to do something a little bit different. So I have to give it a rating which I think is proportional and relative to my view of pens and what I think their place is amongst them. And there are just a lot of really great pens out there nowadays that I find would probably rank higher than this because they have more versatility and utilization. So thank you for watching. There may be more Pen BBS videos in the future because I said I ordered some clear ones. I just want the clear ones because they're nice to see how the pens are made and designed. And, you know, with this acrylic that they machined, the clear pens are definitely quite interesting. So this is the end for now. May you have many, many great writing experiences. Enjoy the wonderful world of nibs, inks, pens, papers. It's a wonderful world we live in. Until next time, bye.